Hey guys, welcome everybody that is joining us today. I am with astrologer Tawny Michelle, and we are going to be exploring the behind the veil astrological energy of July 4th. And that is the date that the United States gained its independence. This is a topic I have been interested in exploring for quite some time now, and I'm having a little bit of a fangirl moment because I actually learned how to do astrology with Tawny. It's something that I was interested in for 20, at least 20, no, 30 years. 30 years before I finally did an astrology course, and it was with Tawny. So I am very, very eternally grateful that you are here joining us today. And I would love it if you could take a moment to introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah. So I go by Tawny Michelle online, which is really my real first and middle name. And yeah, I do astrology. I've been doing astrology since I've been into it my whole life, but I've been taking it more seriously, actually learning it, learning how to read charts, learning how to use it on a day-to-day basis, and really bringing it into like a life practice uh, for I would say since like 2018. And so I'm self-taught for the most part. I did have like a teacher, a friend in my life that helped me learn. But yeah, and I've been doing it since then. I'm also interested in a lot of, different spiritual modalities and spiritual topics and all of that. But astrology is just it's a part of my everyday life. Like I see it everywhere. It's a part of who I am. It's helped me learn so much about myself, and it's also really opened up, a kind of an awakening for me, to help me see that, like, wow, there is some kind of bigger spiritual, reality that we can tap into, and astrology really plugged me into that because if the day time that I was born, and the year that I was born condensed into a chart can be so accurate about who I am and the events in my life, then how is there not, how is the whole as above so below thing, not prevalent, and so I just yeah, it's been fascinating. It never fails to blow my mind. Still to this day, like there's times where I'm still just mind blown by it. Like it's just so literal sometimes, and just like wow, like I cannot even believe that. And um so yeah.
The fact that I think you're self-taught is remarkable because I think that actually lends you to being such a good astrology teacher because you're taking these concepts that can sometimes be very confusing or nebulous and make them so easy to understand. And it's not like, some astrologers, you watch them and they're talking, there's a lot of talking going on, and it's like, it's a lot of just like fluff. It's a lot of talking, but there's not actually a lot of information that is being shared.
Yeah.
And when you actually do your videos, you are actually sharing a lot of relevant and real information. And I think that's really a tribute to the fact that you are self-taught, that you are able to take these concepts that can be confusing and make them very easily to understand and easily digestible.
Yeah, and I get that a lot. I realized that I have a gift for that. It actually I used to actually think of it as a curse, surprisingly for a little bit because I felt like, oh, I cannot talk in this, very scholarly way that some of these other astrologers and just people in general can, like that's just not who I am. I talk on a very like relatable level, and so, but then eventually I realized like, oh, this actually makes me a good teacher. Like I know how to get people to understand astrology. Like even the people in my personal life, like I have friends that have taken my course, the same course that you took, and now are just like they get it. They can speak to where I'm at now, like, and it's crazy. And there's other friends where I've literally just sat down for like 20-30 minutes and basically said, okay, this is how you look at this. Like, this is how to look at a chart that didn't know anything, And within that 30 minutes, they could start naming signs, naming planets, understanding how to look at a chart, and so, yeah, I started realizing like, well, maybe it's not necessarily something I need to be insecure about. Maybe it's like a gift and that's like part of what I say a lot, like, when I have a course that I'm doing where I'm teaching something like astrology, that's usually a lot of the way that I sell it. Like, I can get you to relate to this, like, because that's so important. Is for me, it was like when I could start relating to it instead of it just being information, then everything changed. It was like, oh, okay, like I've experienced this now. It's not just, oh, this means this and this means that, and I have no idea why. It's just what it means. It's like, no, like it means this because of this. And now I get why, because I've experienced this, right? And so yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, it is a gift. And I think that's why I'm also really excited to do this today, because you're going to be able to help take these different concepts and like the locations of the planets and the houses that they're in and explain it in a way that everybody that's watching this video is just going to be able to get it, and it's going to resonate and it's going to make sense. So I'm really excited. And so I guess let's start. Let's dive in then.
Let's go.
All right. So the United States independence was July 4th, 1776. And based on that date, can you give us an outline of what was astrologically notable at that time? Or I guess let's start with like the big three, and then we can break down like if there's maybe like stelliums or other notable placements that planets were in. And for anyone who doesn't understand big three, the big three are the sun, so the location of the sun, the moon, as well as the rising sign and the location of those as well.
Yes. So do you want to, I don't know if it would let me share my screen. Yeah, it's not going to let me share my screen. I didn't know if you wanted to share your screen, if you want to bring up the chart. So, I mean, because I feel like that's the easiest way, but if not, we don't have to. But I have it pulled up already, but
I don't know if I can. If I can, then yes, I would love to. Let me see if there's a way that I can do that.
Usually on mine, it's at the bottom. There's a share, like next to record. There's a share screen.
Yeah, so there's screen, photos, iCloud Drive. I think it's screen, right?
It might be.
Everything on your screen, including notifications. Well, yeah, let's try that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. You're on your phone. That's why it probably looks a little different for you. So I'm not sure how it works on a phone.
I actually can't see you anymore. I've lost everything.
I can still see you. Yeah, on a phone it would probably be a little different.
Okay, well, it's okay. I don't have to see you as long as you can see me. And then let's try that and let's see how that works. Everyone probably knows that I'm still new to Zoom, so a lot of this stuff is still new to me, but we're making it work.
If you want, you can just hit stop share. That way it just goes back to normal, because I don't want it to mess with your recording of this either, There we go.
Okay.
So
you know what I'm actually going to do for anybody that is interested in this? I will actually include, separate to this, I'll include a photo of what the chart looks like for July 4th, 1776, and then people can use it and easily reference that.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So basically there is, a lot of different, there's a lot of back and forth about the different aspects of what creates a birth chart for a nation, right? So, and that's kind of what I want to start with here. And that's what we were talking about originally. I've looked into some of the other ones. It's been a while. It's been like years since I kind of was into this topic. It was more so in the 2020, 2021 era that was very, on and popping with a lot of things happening that were being related to historical events in astrology. And that's when I got very into historical astrology at the time. But I have not really messed with it since then. So, but there are a ton of other potential charts. And there's a lot of back and forth within the astrological community as to number one, the US's birth chart to begin with. But number two, there's just a lot of controversy around what actually creates the birth chart for a nation, because with a human, it's easy. It's just like, oh, this is the time you came out. This was the time you were born, But with a nation, it's just like a region, it's a land, and so, but because the US, as we knew it, or as we know it, in that land was, kind of taken over. A lot of what we usually think about the US's birthday deals with Independence Day and when the Declaration of Independence happened, when there was that independence declared within the US on July 4th, 1776. And basically from there, and that's what, July 4th is about. Every year we celebrate this almost like the birthday of the US. And so with the US's birth chart though, there is, can you still see me?
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure. So the rising sign, which is the sign that is rising on the eastern horizon at the time that you were born, is so important because it's and that's why birth time is so important. But it is a part of who you are. It represents you within your chart, and it also shows us where your houses are. Now, it is not impossible to read a chart without a time, without houses, but it's pretty difficult. You're gonna come off very vague because you're missing a lot of context. So for the US, we have the time of 5:10 p.m. This is called the US Sibley chart. There's other times that some astrologers have argued for on this day, but the general consensus, I would say this is the most popular chart to use for the US's birth chart. And I would say that, a lot of trusted astrologers that I look up to that have been doing this for their whole lives, a lot longer than me, also make really great arguments for this chart. And I can also give you resources later on, Faye, if that's something that you want to list for people, on where they can learn more about that whole side of it if they would like to. But the US Sibley chart is at 5:10 p.m., July 4th, 1776, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So this chart has a Sagittarius ascendant, aka rising. Ascendant and rising are the same. They can be used interchangeably at 12 degrees. The sun is in Cancer. So the US is a Cancer sun, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And I'll go over that in a minute. And then the moon is in Aquarius. And so those are the top three of the US Sibley chart for the Declaration of Independence. So, it was kind of this moment where independence was declared. So we're going to want to see kind of this, we're going to see in the chart some of these more rebellious independence kind of themes within the aspects of this chart, and this chart has that. And I think this is also why this chart is looked at as like one of the most favorable charts for this topic, because number one, it has the Sagittarius ascendant, and back in the day, like the US was looked at as this kind of like cowboy, kind of kind of vibe, and then Sagittarius is the sign of the horse, like, and so and has a lot of like horse like symbolism and features. um and so anyway, so I feel like that makes a lot of sense, and we're looked at as crazy by a lot of other countries because guns are legal, which is very sad. It's just wild and kind of like all about freedom, like all about freedom. And that is why a lot of, like the pilgrims and all of them migrated here for this sense of freedom from religion. And that is also so Sagittarian in so many ways, but it's also mirrored in so many other ways in the chart as well. So Sagittarius is kind of this somewhat rebellious, wild, carefree kind of sign, and with the ascendant, that's kind of the identity, right? And we see that a lot with how we're looked at by other countries. We are looked at as kind of these carefree, careless, sometimes to an extreme, you know, uh, just kind of cowboy like country, like especially back in the day. So so that's interesting. We also have the sun in Cancer. And on top of that, many other placements in Cancer. We have Venus, Jupiter, the sun, and Mercury in Cancer. And so a ton of Cancer placements. So this is a place that, we're wanting to make into a home. Cancer is about having that home, having that family, having that safety, and so this was a place that we wanted to secure as a home, or that they wanted to secure as a home. I'm just saying we as in sense of just Americans in general, but yeah, so there's this sense of home. And really, now that I'm thinking about it, starting off that you were having a side conversation, Faye, about colors and red, white, and blue. That is literally the signs, or the colors of the 3 signs of this birth chart. The top 3: red for Sag, blue for Cancer, white for Aquarius, because Aquarius is an air sign, right? So that actually I just now caught that. I've never caught that before, which is really interesting to me. But anyway, so yeah, I feel like all that Cancer energy, the family became a very big topic. Building homes for families, having homes, that American dream of, coming in and being able to have freedom, a place, a home, a place where you're safe. And, to some extent, especially compared to other places in the world, a place where you can have a family, where you can grow a family, where you can repopulate, etc. Right? And then we have the Aquarius moon, which makes a lot of sense as well to me because, there's a lot of technological advancement within the US, and within, just America in general, but also the moon being in Aquarius is very much about groups of people. And also groups of people that are, different groups of people with different labels, with different backgrounds, that are either within the same amount of, or within the same kind of structure or system of people, different systems, social systems, or people that are trying to get away from that system. And so I'm going to take it a little bit more deeper here because this really matters in this context. The nodes, the North Node and the South Node for the US, for this chart, for the US's birth chart, are in Aquarius and Leo, the signs of Aquarius and Leo. Now, the nodes are very karmic placements. They're a direct, it's kind of like an axis of two opposite poles that basically show us where we're coming from and letting go of, and our karmic, cycles, and where we're going to, and what we need to learn within that. So you could kind of think about it as like karma or fate, slash destiny, for lack of a better, term, or if that helps you at first. But it is this sense of the direction that we're going in. Now, what's really interesting about this chart is that the South Node is also in Aquarius, in the third house. And again, really makes me think of technology and communities and social systems, and breaking free of different social systems, living outside or within different social systems and social constructs, which is really big here in the US. But then we also have the North Node in Leo in the ninth house, which also deals with religion and rulership and, rules and authority. And so there is, again, those themes of kind of trying to break away from a social system of sameness, because back then they were basically trying to break free of this religious sameness that was being kind of pushed upon them, forced upon them. Basically you have to believe in whatever the status quo is, or else you're exiled, or else you're a reject. And so and that's very Aquarian, so they're coming from this very Aquarian place, trying to find a home. Cancer, in this foreign place, all those Cancer placements are in the eighth house of kind of hidden mystery, taboo, etc. They're also looking for financial opportunities, again, eighth house, and stumble upon this whole, country, this whole land, and start trying to make it into a home, for better or for worse. A lot of those Cancer placements are opposite Pluto and Capricorn in the second. And so it's almost like they are, you can kind of see within that this greed, this kind of manipulation, greed, and power that gets exerted to take this land and make it into, what they want it to be. Basically, that's very Pluto opposite all of this stuff in Cancer.
Could you explain the signification of it being opposite? Like, what does Pluto represent, and what does Pluto and Capricorn represent, and why is that notable and significant in that it is opposite all of the eighth house placements? Because I know that a lot of my viewers are very astrologically savvy, but for those that are still learning, I want them to understand why that is so notable.
Yeah. No problem. So with Pluto is the farthest planet that we have knowledge of. And the axis of Pluto kind of is very different than the other planets. So the path that Pluto kind of travels down is very different. It can go very, very low, and then very, very high. And so symbolically, Pluto deals with the underworld for that reason. And because it is so far and so kind of dark, that in astrology, we look at Pluto as this kind of mysterious, collective, unconscious underworld kind of energy. Therefore, it deals with things like power. It deals with things like destruction. It deals with things like the alchemical process of death and rebirth. It deals with crime. It deals with a lot of the darker areas of life, especially related to larger things. It's kind of like a bomb energy, so to say. And so because it's farther away, the farther a planet is away, at least in traditional Hellenistic astrology, which is what I practice, the farther a planet is away, the less effect we're going to feel here on Earth, and less we're going to feel that effect in slower, longer cycles, not on a day-to-day mundane basis as much, unless other personal planets like the moon or the sun or Mercury or Venus or Mars are really aligning, with those planets. Then we may feel them a little bit more on a mundane level for that day or for those couple days, but it's brief periods when that does happen, because the closer the planet is, the quicker it kind of goes around, it kind of moves. So so these long, these farther away planets that take longer to cycle around have a greater impact long term on culture, on different social events, big social events, on the direction and the themes that we see for like a decade or for an era, and so that's kind of how I personally describe and think of these outer planets, such as Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. I think of them as this kind of, they affect longer and larger periods of time, and bigger kind of groups of people individually. Now, if you have a Uranus transit happening in your chart where Uranus is going across one of your personal planets, then yeah, you may feel for a longer period of time. Like I've been having Uranus in my 10th going across my midheaven now for years, and I've definitely noticed that energy, right? And so so with Pluto being that farthest planet that we know of, and it being kind of in the dark, hidden, which is why it also deals with things like corruption, greed, etc. Pluto being in Capricorn, which we just had the Pluto return, which, has been kind of, and are still really technically in the Pluto return, but that has been building for years now. And we also had the alignment of Saturn, which deals with discipline, responsibility, maturity, isolation, restrictions, aligning with Pluto and Jupiter, which Jupiter kind of blows things up, expands things, makes things larger, in Capricorn at the time of this building Pluto return to the US, which happened in the very beginning of 2020. And so many astrologers predicted, some of them being quite accurate, that we were going to have a pandemic, that was one of the possibilities of how this could play out. Pluto also rules things like pandemics, especially like Saturn and Pluto together, and then with Jupiter, they're making it even bigger, like worldwide, like spreading it very easily. So Pluto, takes like 200 and something years to go around the zodiac. And so we were just experiencing that 270 something year cycle with the US's Pluto return in Capricorn just these last several years. And so Pluto and Capricorn in the US's chart, being opposite, which an opposition is literally an opposition. It's there's some kind of opposition between two placements, or two sets of placements, right? It's like you're sitting across from your opponent, and it does give you an opportunity to meet in the middle somewhere, right? But there can be this push and pull, or this power dynamic, this intense power dynamic that kind of comes about. And so in the US Sibley chart for, the Declaration of Independence, we have Pluto and Capricorn, opposing, being opposite of all of these Cancer placements, and Pluto and Capricorn in the second house of, your own money, your own income, your own land, what you own, basically, you're like what you materially own, and wanting to use that for power or for more or for greed or whatever. And then with it opposing all these Cancerian planets, it's like other people's stuff, right? The eighth house rules other people's stuff, exchange, you know, trade, goods and services, business, and so with all of that, and with Jupiter also being in Cancer and Jupiter being exalted, meaning very powerful in the sign of Cancer, there's just this um huge kind of theme going on here of using power and resources as a way to kind of, get what we want and be financially successful, and trade with other countries or trade with, you know, other people or other industries, etc. There's just a lot going on in terms, and I mean, like, the stock market is a very eighth house, things like that. So there's a lot going on in terms of the business and the financial side of this chart. And that makes a lot of sense looking at it from a historical standpoint too, with how we acquired this land, why we acquired this land. Like, there was a innocence to it in a way at first of just wanting to get away and have this sense of freedom and have this ideal of freedom, but we're also doing that while taking it from someone else, and not giving them freedom, and so yeah, it's this very kind of like, which also kind of goes back to the Leo Aquarian axis of like, Aquarius being kind of what's good for everybody, and Leo being like, no, this is what's good for the self, and so and that's why they're an axis, because on their own they can be fine, but being in too much of an extreme of one or the other, it creates problems, it creates conflict, it creates issues, right? And so yeah, and then also we have I also just think this is interesting, we have Neptune in Virgo, trining Pluto in Capricorn and sextiling some of the Cancer placements in the 8th. Neptune in Virgo is in the US's 10th house of career and image and public image, and the midheavens in the 11th, but it's actually kind of still somewhat conjunct Neptune, not by sign or house, but by degree, because the midheavens at 1, Neptune's at 22 Virgo, so it's a little bit of a loose conjunction, but I would still consider that, especially in this kind of setting and scenario. But with that trining the Pluto down in Capricorn, this is where you get a lot of that American dream. And with the North Node and Leo, the glamour, Hollywood, like we became really known for just, that whole era of like the glitz and the glam and, the American dream, people moving over here from other countries to be actors or to go from that rags to riches story, which is very like Neptune and Virgo, trining Pluto and Capricorn and making the sextile to some of the 8th house Cancer placements. Like, oh, this American dream, I can go over there and I can become famous, or I can become rich or wealthy, or, whatever. Right. And a lot of people did. Right. And so I feel like that really ties in with that.
Could you explain a little bit more about the Neptune in Virgo? What does Neptune represent, and what is it being activated, so to say, in Virgo? And also, interestingly enough, exactly as we were talking about Pluto, which I very much look at Pluto as a planet of destruction. Like it comes in and it tests everything, and whatever is not solid and secure, it's going to bring it down. My viewers all know that I hold 2 crystals when I'm recording. And exactly as we were talking about Pluto, one of the crystals, if you ever saw me looking down, Tawny, this is why. One of the crystals literally just in my hand broke apart. Exactly while we were talking about Pluto. That
Wow.
is so Plutonian. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the breakdown. It's the literal breakdown. And we are very much seeing playing out in the world stage right now. We are seeing the literal breakdown of a lot of the Capricornian elements. And what does Capricorn represent?
Yeah.
Government, money, establishments. So we are seeing playing out in the world all of the breakdown of those old Capricornian establishments right now. Exactly as Pluto is having its return into the natal chart. So I think that that is wild as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, Neptune is basically the planet of dreams and illusions. And, on a higher level, it is a oneness, it is an unconditional love, it is spirituality. But it's in Virgo, and so Virgo is a more grounded, practical, detail-oriented sign that really likes to be organized and be in a place where it's a very particular sign. It doesn't let go of control as much, and Neptune is all about letting go of control. And so these two, this placement almost contradicts each other a little bit, but it being in the 10th house, I can see in this, putting this kind of dreaminess on display, and somehow with the US of like, oh, come over here and you can, have this dream, you know what I mean? You can live your dream out, or you can become, whatever you want, which is also, I think it also echoes into the North Node in Leo as well. It's just like you can become whoever you want, you can be whoever you want. And then, with Neptune in the 10th house, it's also this kind of American dream of like, oh, you can come over here and you have much more control than you do in other places, but you also have this sense of, freedom, right? And so with Neptune trining Pluto and in Capricorn, in the 2nd house, again, I think it's just very much like this rags to riches kind of thing that a lot of people viewed America as for so long. And I think that identity is kind of getting reconstructed now with, a lot of this Pluto return as well. Because the things that we relied upon, which are very Capricorn 2nd house, the things that we relied upon for our identity and to keep us stable are no longer relevant as they once were. And so, like you said, Capricorn deals with a lot in terms of the structure, the foundation, the necessities, the things that are necessary in the earthly, physical, 3D, realistic, practical, tangible realm. It deals with tangible results. And when you have Capricorn on a larger scale, you see big structures, as in, like you said, like big entities, big foundations, big establishments, kind of, and Pluto being in there, just really kind of ripping things away and reconstructing everything. And then, Pluto kind of dipping into Aquarius after Saturn also moved into Aquarius after going through Capricorn. And we had that great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn happening in Aquarius back in, I want to say that was at the end of 2020, or it was 2021, I can't remember. 2020, 2021 timeframe when all the crazy stuff was happening.
I think
But
also the time when a lot of people started waking up.
yeah, and I think that the whole Aquarian thing, I did like a whole video on it, and I said like, this is literally a new era. Like this is a new era. This is like a huge symbolism of like what the next, decade, but not even that, next couple hundred years are going to look like, and is starting now with this conjunction, because all that there's been this like prominent focus on this shift from Capricorn to Aquarius in so many different ways. And I feel like we are moving into this very technologically advanced time where some of the old brick and mortar kind of ways of going about things with Capricorn are not going to matter as much. And there's still going to be like, I don't know, we're learning how to use the earth in a different way, or not have to use the earth as much, with things moving into air, because there's more of a focus that's being put on intelligence and smarts and technology, and how can we make things quicker and more convenient and easier, rather than things taking so long, slow, and etc. And then also, how can we get more things and more hands as well? So how can we, improve the lives of more people, rather than, because a Capricorn's kind of like a top down sign, where Aquarius is more of a socially even keel spread kind of sign. Now, this can get, there's negative sides to Aquarius though too. They're both ruled by Saturn. They are both darker signs, difficult signs. They both can have more they both can have more, what's the word that I'm
Well, they're
thinking?
aloof. They're both very aloof.
Yeah, they both can have more malefic traits about them, right? They're not, Aquarius thinks more with its mind and can therefore get very cold and kind of cold-hearted, right? A great Aquarian show to understand Aquarius on such a beautiful level, actually. One of my favorite shows of all time is called Divergent, and it is the perfect example of Aquarian energy in my opinion. And they even say, because they split people into different groups by who they are, it's kind of Aquarian Leo axis, but way more Aquarian. It's a very futuristic, kind of dystopian society kind of Aquarian thing, right? And so but the ones that are smart, the ones that are intelligent and in the intelligent group, end up being so cold-hearted. They have to forget their emotions because it affects their mind, right? And so they can be some of the most cold-hearted ones, and eventually it comes out, like if you get too in your mind, you end up neglecting your emotions, and will literally do things that are just like unthinkable, like even to your own family, and so it's like, and just because of what happened in that show and stuff. But that's what can kind of happen with Aquarian energy, and we saw a lot of that too. And I think 2020 2021, when Saturn eventually moved into Aquarius and all of that, it's just a lot of group think, a lot of sameness can start happening, or everyone needs to think the same and act the same and believe the same thing.
Stop
And
questioning science.
yeah. Yes, don't question the science, there can be fact checkers and, all of that, like, and it can get very dystopian, right? And so, and I like all of those phrases were just so literal to what was happening in the astrology at the time. Like it was cracking me up, like
Social
social.
distancing, right?
I was just like, that is the most Saturn and Aquarius thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, I just, you can't, you just can't. And like, I was just cracking up all the time with all these
You
new
can't
words.
script it. You can't, like, if somebody even wanted to script it to work out that way,
Yeah.
Whoever would have even thought, like at that time, to use the phrase social distancing? It's like, oh, and like, oh, we all have to look out for each other right now. Like, we got to all get this because we got to protect those around us. Like, it's so,
It's not about you, right? It's
that's
this
right.
like
It's not about the individual, it's about the collective.
anti-Leo. Yeah. It's
So
very
crazy.
anti-Leo. And that's why I was kind of out there like, going against it for a little while with like, but we have to have some Leo to balance this out. If this is just all, Aquarian, then like it just, there's going to be like no one's going to be able to have any kind of identity. We're just all going to be a part of the same, and our identity basically becomes the group, right? And then that's how like cults get formed, and culty things start happening. And like, so, and Aquarius is literally one of the biggest signs, that deals with cults a lot of the time. There's just this emphasis on the group, and this just giving up of your identity, giving up of yourself for this bigger thing. And I don't know, it can go to an extreme, but every sign has that, where they have a shadow side, right? But I just wanted to make it clear, because Aquarius, a lot of the times with like pop astrology and the the very surface level astrology, can make Aquarius out to be like it's just this like hippie, we're all gonna be free and whatever, and sing kumbaya with a group of people out in the woods and just like love life. And it's like, no, like Aquarius is an air sign. It's very logical. It may think differently, or it may have it's a fixed air sign, so it's going to have strong fixed thinking. It's going to be very stubborn with its thinking on certain things, what it thinks, and how it thinks that society could improve itself, right? And so and a lot of times, sometimes they don't include themselves in that thinking, because they view themselves as kind of separate from who they're thinking about. Like Aquarius has, as a sign, generally has this love-hate relationship with humans in general, right? It's like, I love you, but I don't, like it's weird. It's a different sign. It's a weird sign. But anyway, but I
They're
just,
aloof. We love them, but they're aloof. I
yeah,
have an Aquarius brother. I love him, but he's aloof.
yeah, I'm an Aquarius moon, and I catch it in myself a lot of the times. I get very awkward at times with like it's taken me a while to learn how to really like express my emotions, and also embrace my awkwardness sometimes with emotions. Like I can come across very like distant, or like I'm in another place, or like I'm not even here or present, and so yeah, it's I get it, trust me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so anyways, was there anything else that, oh, here's another thing I wanted to mention. Um, with the US Sibley chart, we also have Uranus in Gemini. Now, what's interesting about this is that almost every time that the US has had the Uranus and Gemini return, which is in the 7th house for the US. So the 7th house is the house of opponents, open enemies, relationships, commitments, and other people. So in a nation's chart, this would look like other countries.
Mm.
This would look like either countries that are allies or country that are enemies. Now, for us, we have Gemini in the 7th house, which probably isn't the best sign to have in a house like that, because Gemini is very flip-floppy, and if you think about it, we have had a lot of flip-floppy kind of relationships with other countries, whether on our side or on their side. It's like, one minute we're friends and we're great, and the next minute we're enemies, and so boom, just like that, especially with Uranus there, so and Uranus is a planet that brings a lot of like big change, The element of of surprise or unpredictability, also not a great planet to have in that kind of spot as a nation for a chart. The planet of surprise, unpredictability, kind of upgrading and unique, eccentric kind of connections with it being in the seventh house. Um, and I mean, a lot of potential there within connections as well, and especially in like advanced connections and, things like that. But um, what's really interesting about this, and another reason why a lot of people like this chart for the US's birth chart, is that every time Uranus returns in Gemini, there's usually some kind of war that the US ends up in. And so, and I mean, it's happened like on the spot for several times, and so, and Uranus actually is going to move into Gemini within, I don't remember if it's next year or the year after, but it's very soon, because it's in Taurus now and it's coming to that last decan of Taurus. It's gonna, I can't remember if it's already retrograde. I don't think it's retrograded yet. I think it's going to start retrograding soon though. But within the next year or two, Uranus is going to enter into Gemini. And so that will be interesting to kind of witness that, to be aware of that. I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen, but what's also interesting is that Mars, which is the planet of war, and the planet of masculinity and aggression and conflict and action and assertion, is also in the seventh house in Gemini for the US's chart. And so I just feel like that also really kind of ties in with everything as well. So that was something else I wanted to mention about this chart. That's usually mentioned a lot, and there's a lot you can look into with that too, like with the Uranus and Gemini and US cycles and history and stuff, and you can see all the different times that we had Uranus return to this spot that it's in for this chart, where there was some kind of war that we found ourselves involved in. So just
It
very
doesn't surprise me. I mean, because I kind of been picking up that it's going to get progressively a little bit more and more gnarly, and I'm trying to use my words, carefully. I don't want to like trigger anyone or activate them into thinking like, I mean, and I talk about this a lot, it's not doom and gloom, but that it's going to progressively get worse and worse until about 2026, and that's going to be like a tipping point. So it's kind of interesting to hear that and hearing how that's going to be lining up with that.
Yeah, I know. I'm personally not that stoked for it, because I feel like, again, like I know like we are leading towards so many, like such a technological society at this point, and I know it's happening, but it's just Uranus and Gemini, it is going to be nuts with that, and I'm just like, after the North Node moved through Gemini in 2020 and in 2021, I was just like, I am good on Gemini transits, just the constant fact checking and fact changing, and he said this and she said that, and just the media and just all of the flip flopping, like, and you couldn't tell what was truth from fact, from live, from whatever anymore. It was just, everything was just everywhere, right? And you couldn't, I mean, it was just insane, and then the South Node being in Sag, I feel like made it even worse, because everything got really heated. You couldn't even talk about your beliefs without literally like losing family members or friends, or I mean, like, it was insane. It was just a very touchy time, and a lot of similar signs were being activated during the Salem witch trials. And
Oh, no
so
kidding. Wow.
yeah, I think it was I think Neptune was in Pisces then. Gemini and Sag. There's some bigger transits going on in Gemini and Sagittarius, but that's what it felt like. Because it's like you were getting attacked for your beliefs, and there was just this strong, sense of belief, which is very Sag, it's very Sagittarian of, just this sense of, I can't remember the word I'm looking for, dogma. The sense of dogma. I was wanting to say bias. I was like, that is not the word I'm looking for. The sense of dogma, like it was just like, everyone needed to believe this certain way. Plus with the Aquarian energy, I felt like that, and I kind of started seeing some similarities at the time I never really noticed before between Aquarius and Sagittarius. Because I feel like, Aquarius always gets dubbed as kind of like the rebel, but I think of Sag now as more of a rebel, honestly, because I mean, Aquarius is just a fixed air sign, thinks outside of the box, it may think a little differently. But I would say the fire signs are more of the rebellious signs. And I would say, but Aquarius and Sagittarius both have this like, the strong sense of beliefs, and can sometimes get very dogmatic with them and want to box everything into like, and other people into what they believe. And with Sag, it's got that fire and anger behind it, so it can get very angry and very touchy and very fired up about what it believes, and where you can't tell it anything. It's like all wrapped up in this philosophy or this law or this, whatever, this ideal. And at the time, or this religious ideal, and at the time of the Salem witch trials, that was that. It was just like, this is it. We're burning people alive over this ideal, and it was just it was happening so quickly, and everyone was so fired up, and they all just kind of went along with this ideal, and didn't really question it, and that's where Gemini would kind of come in, like, wait, let's kind of question this, and so yeah, it was just, it's crazy, but yeah, there's just this kind of with Sag and Gemini, there's this kind of like, belief, versus fact, right? And people get really, really caught up sometimes. So anyways.
It's interesting because I have a friend who says to me, and she's the more I learn about astrology, the more I realize just how true this is. She says astrology doesn't lie. And man, looking back through history and looking at where the placements of the planets were, really we can start to see that on such a deep fundamental level. There are these cycles that play out in the world stage, and they're connected to what is going on astrologically at the time. It's mind-blowing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I started looking really back into history. When in 2020, 2021, when I got really into historical astrology and like really tracking the cycles and stuff to try to see like, okay, like what's going to happen next? I was trying to come up with like predictions and videos I was working on and stuff. And yeah, it was insane. I could not believe some of the similarities, like how eerily similar, and like I was trying to bring up the Salem witch trials a lot, because I saw so many of the similarities in there that, so there was just so many weird similarities astrologically and cycles from that time. And yeah, it was just,
look at what cancel culture is. Cancel culture is a way of hanging somebody out to dry.
yeah,
You're cutting them off. You're taking away their ability to speak.
mm-hmm.
You're literally disconnecting them from everyone and everything.
Yeah.
That is kind of what they were doing at the Salem witch trials.
Mhm.
They were separating people from other people. They were killing them if need be.
And taking away their status. It's
Yes.
very, to me, that's very Aquarian and Leo. Aquarian
Mhm.
versus Leo. It's kind of Aquarius in a way, like, just to think about it, almost like Aquarius taking away the status, right? Like the sun, the that rules Leo, right? Like it's like, okay, like since we can't basically kill you or get you to like do whatever we want, we're just gonna cancel you, and that way everybody knows that you've been canceled and that you are not to be trusted, and we're all gonna just hate on you and send you a bunch of hate, and just get you to completely step down, completely pull back, etc., etc. And it's just like, geez, it's like the crowd and the people are found a way to take matters into their own hands. And at some level, though, there's, because, and this is kind of the issue with Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn wants rules and structure, so it can almost like see like, and what's right and what's not right. Right, with Aquarius, it's like there's no rules and structure, there's just a system, right? And so, but there's no one, there's no one dictating it, there's no one kind of looking at it to see if it's fair, correct, or right, because it's the people, it's not going through you know a court of law or something like that, and so it's just like, and so we're seeing like there's a beauty in it in a way, because now the people have more power. But because it's not being looked at or mitigated or anything like that, it's just like, okay, well, and then we start getting stupid situations happening. We start literally getting online bullying happening. We start getting, just people canceled for a different opinion, like not because they are, not because they did some really crazy hurtful crime and are like a pedophile or something, and the judicial court didn't do anything about it or something. It's just like, oh, you believe differently than I do, cancel, like, and so, and that's when it gets scary, and that's where it really goes back to also, the times of, back in 2020 and 2021, where it got really heated on like, you either believe this way or you don't, and if you don't, then you're exiled, which again, Saturn and Aquarius deals a lot with exile as well, and so, and rejecting, so yeah, it's so interesting.
It's so interesting because astrology really doesn't lie.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
I-
Yeah.
Can we just touch upon lastly the signification, because you had said there was a number of planets in Cancer. So it sounded like there is a stellium of planets in Cancer. So can we kind of talk about like what the signification of a stellium is and those specific planets, how they're comprising the energy as it relates to the United States?
Yeah. So, number one, the Cancer eighth house is already a big deal, even without this stellium, because the ruler of the chart is in the eighth, which is Jupiter. And that is because it has a Sag ascendant. So, whatever planet rules your ascendant is your chart ruler. And that is an important planet in your chart. So for this particular chart, for the US Sibley chart, the chart ruler is Jupiter. So, and Jupiter is exalted, which is really great. It's in its exaltation. So, which is, just, it's really great. But it also, wherever it's placed, is going to show a really huge focus, right? So it's placed on the eighth house in Cancer. So it shows this huge focus. It's also there with Venus as well. So it shows this huge focus on finances, on business, on investments, on trade, on foreign exchange, on, you know, different, different, um, different resources, and having different resources, owning different resources, being able to trade different resources. We also have Mercury there in the eighth, which deals with trade. Venus dealing even more with finances and money. And, the sun, as well, which is, literally kind of the path of the chart. So huge financial focus, huge business investment focus as well. And focus on basically, just a booming economy, like that is just such a huge focus for this chart. So what I would say though is, the eighth house can also deal with a lot of mystery, so with Jupiter exalted in the eighth, I would say that, there is this kind of great success and great luck that we have in terms of, or at least, somewhat, it may not be all the time, but somewhat that we have in terms of economical situations. But there's also this growth that comes from debt, because the eighth house rules debt, and it actually is a more malefic house. It rules lack, debt, mystery, the taboo, death, and so it almost looks as if we gain and grow and become more financially and economically successful through crisis, through crisis, through major change, major transformation, in a very likely unfair way, because Saturn is in Libra, which also makes sense. Saturn's exalted in Libra. Libra is the sign of the scales, is the sign of balance, is the sign of fairness. And Saturn can rule some of those things as well, which is why it's exalted in Libra. So this really makes me think of the laws, the judicial system, the way that we go about, or the initial ideals, I would say, for our original, legal system. But with Saturn squaring the sun in Cancer, it may as well be squaring the rest of the eighth house planets as well. It just goes to show that there are a lot of things with Saturn being in Libra, especially in the 11th house, which would also rule allies, other countries. It's a social house, so other countries, other allies that we are in line with, etc., that we can maybe go about things in unfair ways at times, even with people like allies, over the economy, over financial deficit, over financial issues, debt, things like that. And so that and those kinds of things can also lead to war in the long run, because Saturn trines Uranus in the seventh. I meant Uranus in the seventh that I was talking about earlier can deal with war. And a lot of times when that Uranus return happens, there's some kind of war that we end up involved in. And also the seventh house ruler, since the seventh house is Gemini, seventh house ruler is Mercury, which is in the eighth house. And so again, we just have this prominent focus on the eighth house, on resources and investments, debt, trade, exchange, basically getting what we need above all else.
Yeah.
Like I would look at this and say, if this was a person, like they are determined and will likely stop at nothing to get their needs met. like to get what they want, or to, whatever, and there's a lot of people that believe, I'm not going to say it's right or wrong necessarily, but there's a lot of people that believe that, wars make money, and if we, were willing to do what we did to obtain this country, to obtain this land, then I mean, I wouldn't really, I wouldn't really put it past us. Like, I wouldn't really look at this chart and think that that's not a true statement, because it very well could be true, but we also have a lot of success in doing that, which is kind of the sad part about it, because this is a very lucky eighth house. You got Jupiter exalted there with Venus, the two benefics, literally conjunct in Cancer. But there's a lot of things that likely go on behind the scene that are very top secret. And I would also say, with it being the eighth house can rule government. It can rule the CIA, it can rule investigative departments, things like that. So a lot of this is being, obviously controlled by the government. And I would think, and yeah, I mean, it's
We talk about this a lot on my channel. My viewers are very, very savvy to all of the alphabet agencies and the corruption that lies there. So you're saying it in a very delicate way, and I appreciate it. Like, I think that was perfect and spot on. But yeah, we talk a lot about that here.
Yeah, okay. I haven't talked about it in a really long time, especially publicly, really. And so I know I've gotten like a ton of new people since then. So I don't even know if they know my views, you know what I mean, sometimes. And so I try to just act as if this, like, people haven't known me that well, or haven't known me that long, and I just talk as if, like, like, just like, it's a newer conversation, you know what I mean? So
Right.
so yeah, but thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, no, there is nothing taboo on this station.
Okay.
But it's interesting also, because as you were kind of like discussing this and exploring it, it also made me think about, like, the way in which money can be made here, which is also through taboo, where people, like we were saying before, are coming here from other countries because we have this sense of freedom and the expectation of freedom. So if there were things that would be considered taboo in other countries, that they couldn't make money through those industries or through those resources, this is where they would potentially come to explore all of those taboo subjects and to establish themselves and make money through all of those taboo subjects.
Yes. And I think this is also why the US, there's more people. So the percentage to, like, rich to poor people has such a contrast, right? Because there is a lot of success and opportunity here to be had, but it's in the eighth house. So it's like hidden knowledge almost, right? Like,
Oh, that's a great point.
yeah, like, it's literally like hidden knowledge. So you just don't, you don't know until you kind of have to pull strings or find the secret, to getting there. And a lot of it, though, with that North Node in Leo, is going to be, and what I've found is that a lot of these successful and wealthy people end up being the rebels. They end up going outside of what is sold to us, of this American dream, of this, like, oh, fit in with society and go to school and then go to college and then rack up all this student loan debt so it pays for our economy. Like, they want debt, like, they, like, with this eighth house full of this stuff, like, debt is it's not bad like a lot of people think it is. And I feel like they, I don't know. I feel like they want people in debt. Everything is a business here.
Yeah.
And that's why there's probably not going to be free healthcare. I would be surprised if that happened, but because the healthcare industry is a business, the stuff they put in our food and our medicines, all of that is leading us to have to go to healthcare to pay more money, and then that is only a temporary fix. So we end up having to come back to pay more money. And even looking at this chart with all of this eighth house stuff, and like with everything I've already said about this chart, this country is a business.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the way that people will thrive is not by, like, again, doing this Aquarian South Node thing of just, basically bitching about what needs to change and, just going along with the herd, right? It is actually the Leo North Node. Like when you start treating yourself as someone important and you start going, doing it your own way and doing your own thing, things open up, because the Leo North Node in the ninth is connected to the eighth house. The sun, the ruler of the ninth, the sun is in the eighth. So, I feel like that's the way that a lot of people, are going to, like, will and can find success, basically. And I think it's also a lot about who as
I
well.
was thinking that when you were talking about like the way to make money is hidden, it got me actually thinking like there's a lot of these secret organizations and they actually kind of like control the valve of the success, which ties into what you were also saying before, which is like the way to actually get success is by being the individual. And it's not by going along with the herd, because they are the gatekeepers. So if you want to bypass the gatekeeper and find your own success, it's by going your own way. It's by embracing your inner Leo qualities, which is the self. So if you want to bypass the methodologies that they have set up to make money, go your own way.
Right. Yeah, and it's so funny because I've never looked at this chart like this before. Like that, a lot of that I just realized looking at it, like, because I've never looked at it and thought like, okay, if I wanted to, get wealthy or be successful in America, I never looked at it through that lens until just now. And I was like, oh my God, this is so dead on, because a lot of people, again, like, they are victims of their environment, victims of the basic knowledge that is taught, Aquarian third house, and like that herd mentality of like, oh, this is what you have to do, and that's just passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down. And then still we have, such a small percentage of people that are actually successful and are able to live a life beyond their wildest dreams because of, again, no one really knows. It's this big secret, like, and so, but a lot of them, basically had this energy of being successful before they were, and they didn't give up, and they had this like stubborn Leo-ness, right? Like, I'm going to keep going. And a lot of the success stories you hear are like that. And a lot of them also say you have to change your environment. You have to change the people that you're around, and that's very third house Aquarius. Like, if you're around this environment of people that are, complaining about money and want to be the victim all the time and not want to take any responsibility for anything or change anything and aren't doing anything about their situation, then why do you think your life is going to be any different in that, like, and so, like, that is like one of the number one thing I always hear really successful people saying is like, you are who you hang out with, like that whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, that is very Aquarian Leo, and just getting out of that, these old kind of beliefs that were taught growing up, which are very third house kind of things, like just things that we take as basic or common sense, that really, like, we're not even questioning, but those are the things that kind of keep us in this like herd mentality of just like these robots basically, and like when a lot of people, when they have their awakening, they look around and they're like, oh my God, everyone's just like robots, everyone's just walking around this just robotic, hi, bye, have a nice day, how are you today, fine, like just like we just have automated responses. We are just like on autopilot a lot of the time. I have to go to work, pick up the kids, get groceries, go home, cook dinner, escape through watching Netflix, and then start all over the next day, like, and I feel like it's just so Aquarian, that Aquarian third house. It's like mind control.
Yeah.
And that's kind of very Aquarian too. And I was kind of bringing that up back in like 2020, 2021, when like Saturn and all of them were moving through Aquarius. I was like, this literally looks like mind control, and like, and through the media, which is third, ninth house, like, and yeah, it's just it's crazy when you wake up from all of that. I had a whole nother awakening in 2020 and 2021 that was more of like a world awakening, not just like an inner awakening, but like, holy crap, this is what's going on in the world. So
Your content, I actually have to say, I don't know where if this shows up in your chart or where it shows up. You are very also particularly gifted in, I would say, almost like transmuting the heavy, dense, dark energy of a tragedy, reframing it and delivering it into such a way that it's like, oh my God, yes, I understand that. I see that now. Because like the world was going to hell in a handbasket during that time. But your content and the way that you were able to express it and bring it forth into the videos at that time was so positive and uplifting. And it was like I was like watching you transmute the dark and alchemize it into the light. So actually, some of my favorite videos of yours, I'll sometimes even, this is the beautiful thing about astrology. You can go back and you can watch old videos, and they will make sense if you know what was notable going on at that time. So if people go back and watch like your videos from 2021, when you were like going through that whole like world awakening, it was so interesting to see how you were able to flush that out into an easily digestible way.
yeah,
I think it actually is one of your gifts, transmuting the dark into the light.
yeah, no, and I definitely do. I try. But I was trying, and it was hard. Like 2020, in the beginning of 2021, I didn't talk too openly about it. I would mention it sometimes, I would bring it up sometimes. It was really bothering me behind the scenes. But it was just so like things were so amplified that it was like, if I talk about this, I feel like I'm going to be canceled, like, and so I was seeing people get canceled left and right, and people just getting dragged all over the internet. The astrology community was literally like in a conflict, like people were also like even in the astrology community, it put rifts in between people, and it was just like crazy. And so I was trying to like hold it all in. And then I started getting a little bit more, active about speaking about it over on Instagram. And a lot of the people on my Instagram were agreeing with me. And so that was really cool. And I was like, oh, okay, like, and then, but I wasn't saying much about it on YouTube because I felt like that was like my bigger platform. And, so I was holding it in for a while. And I also didn't know how to speak about it because I hadn't found a way to completely work through it within myself for a little bit there. I was kind of like really struggling internally with it. I was in a lot of fear. I was, I didn't know how things were going to turn out. I was thinking like worst case scenario, I'm going to have to find a way to like live off some land and, you know, homeschool my son and like just all this stuff, you know, I'm just like, it was just crazy. And then eventually though, I started having these like realizations, and you know, I kind of came back to YouTube, and I was like, and I remember I was doing a Virgo season video or something, and I was like, look, like, you know, I'm gonna get real, like this is really bothering me, and I feel like I haven't been talking about it because everyone's freaking acting insane, and like, and just I just put it all out there, like how I felt, you know, like, and what I supported and what I didn't, and that I'm okay though with whatever anybody else supports, because it would be hypocritical for me to um you know, basically be saying like, I want to be supported even if we have a different opinion, but I'm not going to support you if you have a different opinion, you know? And that's what I couldn't stand. It was like, when did it become a crime for people to not agree on everything, you know, or for people to have a different opinion or belief about something? Like, when did that become a bad thing, you know? And so that's what was driving me nuts, because it was like, wow, like, can we not still be friends if I have a different opinion? Like, am I not allowed? Are we only allowed to agree at all times? And that's that. Like, so anyway, but then through that, it started becoming very clear like how to deal with it internally. And that was when I was able to start, you know, just kind of having more fun with it and taking it in more of like a comedic direction sometimes. And while also just, I don't know, reminding people that it's really okay, you know, like, because at the end of the day, like, you know, there's a whole freaking world out there. And I just kind of realized, like, you know, after traveling that summer in 2021, I just kind of realized there's a whole world out here. I went to Florida, and it was like it wasn't even happening, and I was just like cracking up about it, because it was like, oh my God, like they're just living normal day-to-day life down here, just going on, like they are so unbothered. And like, so many people are just freaking out, you know, and I was included, like in my own way, you know. So it just, I don't know, it just widened my perspective completely after that. And I was like, okay, I cannot live my life in this fear anymore. It's just not, it's not healthy, and it's not getting me anywhere. So it's like, okay, if it does get bad, then I'll have to deal with it then, because I'm not going to keep living my life preparing mentally for the worst.
Yeah.
But like, and nothing's changing, you know? So it's like, so yeah, it just, but thank you. I appreciate that. That is something that I do try to do. Like, it is important to me, because I feel like there are darker parts of life a lot that I've been through a lot in my life. And when I can begin to understand them and kind of bring light to them and transmute them into light experiences, it helps the healing process so much more. And it helps just widen our perspective that much more. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who better to show us the way, like who better to help us navigate like the bowels of hell than somebody who has been there and back?
right, right.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't want Pollyanna to help me navigate the bowels of hell.
Yeah.
I want like like Lucifer incarnate, but like good incarnate.
Right. Yeah.
Pollyanna, like I want Pollyanna to help me bake cookies. You know, like let's go into the kitchen with the sunlight shining through. But when I got the shit to deal with, I want somebody that knows how to get me through it.
Right, right. Exactly. Exactly. Someone that's like been there, you know, and survived it, and is coming out and being very real and authentic about it, you know, like, and that those are the kind of people that I personally am inspired by, you know. And so it's like, yeah, so I completely understand that.
Tani, this was absolutely amazing. Is there any last things that you want to share with us, either about the chart or even your own personal opinion and beliefs about like where we're going, how things are going to change, or just any last things that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, so I will be honest, I have not looked ahead in a little while. I don't look too far ahead anymore. I was doing that a lot back then, and I just kind of realized like I don't know, like I don't like to worry myself, like, because sometimes that can turn into fear. You see something and you're like, oh, that looks scary. But there's been so many events that passed that looked so scary, yet nothing even happened, So it's like I just don't want to freak myself out or do anything or see anything that's just gonna be like, oh, I'm just going to spin my wheels sitting here thinking about this, but I have 2 years or 5 years or 10 years till it happens. It's just like, so I don't really look too far ahead anymore. And I also try not to live my life dictated by the astrology. So I try to live my life um with astrology, like using astrology as like a way to make sense of things that are happening, or um in a way that kind of symbolizes things that are happening, but not in a way of like, oh, this transit's going to happen, so that means my life's going to be fucked for the next however long, like in this fear-based place, basically, right? Like this lack-based, fear-based place with astrology of like planning for the worst or thinking the worst is going to happen, or like whatever, right? Like, or feeling like the astrology rules me and dictates me in my life, because then that's me giving my power away.
Yes.
So I try not to do that anymore. I just try to take it as it comes. And like I look for like the month ahead or things like that. Like even this year, it's kind of funny. I only wrote down like the biggest transits, like the bigger transits that were happening for the year. Usually I write down on like a monthly transits for each month, and the end of the year for the next year, right? And I didn't even do that. I have been writing down the monthly transits literally like a week before the next month starts, and I'm about to film the monthly video. And it's like, and it's just so funny because it's been kind of cool doing it that way. And this is the first year I've really did it that way, because it's just been like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Now that's coming this month, it's just kind of sprung on me. And it's like, and then that way there's not just this like period of like, oh, I know that's coming, and way down like at the end of the year, and I'm really nervous for that. And it like it'll sit there in the back of my mind sometimes, like, and I will think, when things come up and things happen throughout the year, it's like, oh, well, I got to make sure by that end of the year period that I'm, kind of available, and in case something comes up, like, and it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to like live my life, and I want astrology to be helpful. I don't want to use it as a fear-based thing or a
Yes.
thing that I'm worrying about, and so yeah, so I know that's not really answering your question.
No, it did. I think it's helpful because I think sometimes, and a lot of us astrologers will say, like, don't use this to dictate your life. Use this more like a roadmap to help you navigate any potential things that may come up for you, but don't live by it. And I think it also kind of like you're saying, like it ruins the surprise. Like let
Yeah.
life also unfold. Let yourself be like surprised by the things that are going to happen instead of like looking like, oh, on September 12th, this is what's going to happen to me, or November 11th. Like allow
Yeah.
yourself to be surprised by life.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what I've leaned into with astrology. It's like I let it be more of a validating and a confirmation thing now, rather than like oh my God, this is coming and I have to like warn people and everything. Like, and I don't know what's gonna happen or how it's gonna play out. I'm like really worried about it. I don't know what's gonna, and I have to be careful. And like, like it's just I don't like doing that. Like that's
Yeah.
not fun, like, so I'm
Yeah.
just not going to do that, so um but yeah.
Except the one thing, guys, don't cut bangs when Venus is in retrograde. That's like the one thing I'll say. Like, probably not a good time to like cut bangs. But
Yeah,
other
yeah,
than that, like you do you, boo.
yeah, and it's still like, even then I don't think that's fear necessarily. It's just like, hey, like, anytime I've, done this on a retrograde, like anytime I've dyed my hair or went and got my hair done on a retrograde, I usually regret it, like I usually regret it where something horrible happens and it does not turn out good. So it's like, retrogrades usually don't last that long, like especially like a Venus retrograde or a Mercury retrograde. Like you can wait a few weeks, so and so that's just really, again, just helpful information, just confirming of like, yeah, like I probably shouldn't, this probably isn't the time to like do this right now. And it's
Yeah.
not a fear-based place. It's just like, I've seen the pattern very clearly and I don't want to repeat that pattern, like, and so, so that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. We have the roadmap. We know the way. We've
Yeah,
seen the mile markers. We know what happened at mile marker 55. We don't want a repeat of that. That's what it is.
right, right.
Oh, this was wonderful. Thank you. This was really, it was a real treat for me. And thank you for bringing your insight, your experience, your wisdom. And I'm going to link all of your social media and your YouTube and everything down below. So I'm going to really encourage you guys, please check Tawny out. Her YouTube channel is fire. There's a lot of other subscribers. I won't religiously watch their videos. Yours, I don't comment. I'm a shit. I'm sorry. And I'm always encouraging my viewers. I'm like, every like, every comment, it all helps the channel grow. And I don't even do that. I'm sorry. I'm going to start though.
It's
I'm going
okay.
to take my own words of wisdom.
Yes, yes, yes. It's okay though.
But seriously, guys, check out Tawny. I'm going to link all of her information down below. And this was really a gift. Thank you for this. I'm very appreciative. And yeah, let's all, guys, like go out. Let's celebrate our 4th and have a wonderful time and be safe.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for catching us today and for viewing. And I'll see you guys next time.